Hello everybody and welcome to the Cam Rogers Show. I am not Cam Rogers. I am Harris Rubenstein filling in for Cam Rogers, who is still on his Thanksgiving break. So hi Cam, he's still chilling at home in Nashua, New Hampshire. We hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend. We are happy to be back with you here on Chat Sports. So let's break it down what we got today on today's show, because what happened yesterday with the college coaching chaos was absolutely outrageous. We're going to go through the Greg Schiano coaching situation in Tennessee. We're going to go through a full roundup of the people that got hired and also some open slots as well. We're going to do a little college football playoff projections with the new rankings coming out tomorrow. So remember to tune into Chat Sports at 7 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow for the ranking show. And then we're going to go through the NFL playoff picture after a pretty active NFL Sunday. And then we're going to end it with a little inquiry that I've been interested in. Is the college game currently healthier than the NFL? So we have a pretty packed show for you guys today, and that coaching roundup is going to be fun. We're going to give you grades for the Chip Kelly hire to UCLA. We will also give you a grade for the Dan Mullen hire to Florida. Got some pretty interesting thoughts about that, and we're also going to welcome in James Yoder, one of our college football insiders, and also the Michigan football insider, to help us out with the college football playoff projections. But just a reminder that the Cam Rogers Show is presented by Mizzen & Main, who says you can't have to be comfortable at the office. Mizzen & Main makes comfortable dress shirts that are perfect for your work days, corporate events, or parties, and so much more. We know our friend here at Chat Sports, Tom Downey, loves taking them out when we go out to bars. They're so comfortable, you'll think you're headed to the gym. Their shirts are made out of performance fabric, but they have the look of a professional dress shirt. We wear them. We love them. Head over to www.comfortable.af because, yes, they are comfortable as F. I think it's time, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is time that we break down the madness that was the Greg Schiano Tennessee situation. So we have a little bit of a timeline for you guys to break this down, because the only way you can accurately look at this is just by going at it. So we're going to start yesterday at 10:40 a.m. Tennessee we start hearing some rumors that Tennessee is going to hire a head coach. We weren't really sure at first who that head coach was. We had a tweet from Dan Woykin, who we'll bring it up on screen in just a little bit. We had him say that that Tennessee was going to hire a head coach. And at this point, I'm pretty sure the entire college football blogosphere had eaten up so many groomers that everyone thought it was going to be John Gruden. But here's the reminder, everyone. John Gruden is a mirage. John Gruden is the coach that you always think is there, but is never actually there. You look left and he's there, then you look back and he's gone. He's a phantom. He doesn't actually exist. So everyone thought that it was going to be John Gruden, but it wasn't John Gruden. It was Greg Schiano, which was a crazy, crazy thing, because Greg Schiano up to that point had not even been rumored to go to Tennessee at that point. So we'll bring the tweet up here for you. Dan Walkin saying, boom, Tennessee is naming a coach later today, 10:35 a.m. yesterday. Again, at that point, everyone thought it was going to be John Gruden. The groomers had been eaten up, and then whammo. It was not John Gruden. It was Greg Schiano. So before we get into the rest of it, Greg Schiano is a hire for Tennessee personally. It's a little funky, because if you look at his total coaching resume and you look at the style that he's used to coaching with, I think he would have gotten eaten alive in the SEC. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I question the way that his style would have fit into the SEC and with Tennessee. You know, he coached at Rutgers. Obviously, a lot of NFL talent that came out of that. Then he went to the Bucs as well. But if you look at just his coaching style, it's very kind of Big Ten-ish. And I know that's a little interesting to say. What do you mean by that, Harris? Every single conference has their own different style and a different way that people fit. Hence why the Dan Mullen hire from him going to Mississippi State to Florida is probably a good hire due to his coaching style. But the Greg Schiano fit with Tennessee was always a little bit weird. So we'll bring up the next tweet here. Officially 10:40, Tennessee is finalizing a deal with Greg Schiano. And then, there's no other way to put this, all hell broke loose. We had Tennessee government officials tweeting out that they had reached out to the AD of Tennessee and that they were just appalled that this was even an option. Apparently what they were upset about was the fact that Greg Schiano was involved with the supposed cover-up of the Darius Sandusky scandal at Penn State. Now, Greg Schiano has mentioned multiple times that he's denied any sort of knowledge of what was going on at the time. You know, this and that, I had no idea, I'm innocent, you know, whatever. But at the same time, I understand why the Tennessee officials will be a little upset. I think it was a slight overreaction. And when I say overreaction, let's bring up the next pictures of the tweets that we have here. Here is your overreaction. This is The Rock on Tennessee's campus, one of the most notorious things in the entire Tennessee campus. Schiano covered up child rape at Penn State, was graffitied onto said rock. You should have read the message boards and the Tennessee fan boards on Reddit and all over the internet. It was absolute chaos. It would burn it down. This was crazy. They were not accepting the fact that they were going to bring in someone who had this supposed situation put on him. And then we see here at 1:24 p.m., Greg Schiano is currently concerned with the climate of the Tennessee fan base and the reaction towards report of his contract being finalized at Tennessee. The deal might not get finalized. So for the first time ever, people who were commenting on message boards actually got heard, and they didn't end up hiring him. So we had a reaction from Mark Dominic, who, if you don't know who Mark Dominic was the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who hired Greg Schiano way back when. And he mentions, we spent hours and hours interviewing and background checks on Greg Schiano. Excuse me, yes, we didn't win. Fact, he's honest, awesome father/husband, and an excellent football coach. This shouldn't be whether you think you like him or not. You don't even know him. Hashtag Meyer, hashtag Belichick, ask them. So when it comes, what he means by that, Greg Schiano, obviously the defensive coordinator right now for Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and him and Bill Belichick have a very, very close relationship. Bill Belichick has a lot of ties back to Rutgers. Both of his sons played football at Rutgers under Greg Schiano. And if you actually look at the Bill Belichick defense, he has multiple players from that Greg Schiano Rutgers defense back when he was the head coach. So we have a little weigh-in here for you. Were the fans right to be angry about Greg Schiano? And this is kind of the ultimate question. It isn't about, I guess it is about whether or not Greg Schiano did hide or know about what was going on at Penn State. But do the fans have a right to be angry? And yes and no. I think this is an incredibly interesting and unique scenario because, one, we don't know if it's true about Greg Schiano. Two, the reaction to this was just, I came out of almost nowhere. Government officials sending out tweets that it was pathetic. And then we had this morning, apparently, a rumor that Jason Witten is going to retire mid-season to become the Tennessee head coach. We are officially in just chaos over this Tennessee coaching job. And also, this is a terrible look for the school because not only did they botch this current hiring, who wants to be the head coach of Tennessee anymore? Think about it. They just ran a guy out of town before the ink on his contract was even dry. Why would you want to be the head coach for this football team after what happened with Greg Schiano? I think it's absolutely outrageous what Tennessee fans have done to Greg Schiano, because whether or not I think he's a good fit or not, Greg Schiano is a good football coach. Greg Schiano is a stable football coach, and Greg Schiano would bring just an overwhelming sense of calm to a program that really hasn't had it for the past decade now? So it all comes down to where, I guess, your priorities are when it comes to hiring a football coach. Do you want someone who might have a little baggage with them but bring success to your program? Do you want a newbie that has no baggage but has a lot of question marks around them, like I would say a Scott Frost? There's a lot of different angles to come with this Greg Schiano situation. But I think the number one thing we need to focus on with this, Tennessee listened. They listened to their fan base. And I think that is a supremely valuable thing for a football team to do. Again, your fans are not always right. I don't think this should create a precedent that your fans are always right and that you should always listen to them. But in a situation like this, after what happened with Butch Jones and after what's happened with a lot of different coaching hires throughout all of college football and about how fans have been upset with that, I think I think this was a good thing for Tennessee to do, to listen. However, I don't know who the heck they're going to hire. We're going to have some coaching options for them a little bit later, but we're going to keep track of this Greg Schiano Tennessee situation if we get more information as the day goes on. So stay tuned on the Chat Sports blogosphere. We will have any and all information that comes out about Greg Schiano. But that was our opening rant. Thank you, Tennessee, for being as entertaining as always. But they may have botched their coaching situation, but we had two massive coaching hires this weekend between Chip Kelly and Dan Mullen to Florida. So that is going to bring us into our college coaching jobs roundup. So a little bit of a drum roll, please. Let's get into UCLA hiring Chip Kelly. And ladies and gentlemen, I think there is only one grade, and here, Elena, we'll bring it back on screen. There's only one grade that you can give Chip Kelly signing to Florida, signing to UCLA. A fat A, a big old A. Best possible hire that UCLA could have possibly made. Perfect fit. He will bring stability to that program. He will bring a legitimate offense to that program. He will bring recruiting knowledge in the Pac-12, success in bowl games, success on a national stage. He will bring everything that UCLA has been looking for out of their program. Because if there's one thing that UCLA has not been able to do forever, it is win big football games. Never have they been able to win big football games. And finally, they bring in a head coach who has won big football games inside of their conference. And I think it's also important that UCLA for years, actually pretty much their entire existence as a football team, has been trying to get out of the shadow of USC. And if you're going to do that, you need a name coach. And I'm sorry, Jim Mora was not that name. So think about it now. If you live in Los Angeles as a high school football player and you have an option between going to USC and playing for Clay Helton and playing for UCLA under Chip Kelly, I mean, at that point, that is a really difficult decision to make if you are a kid, because you have the allure of USC, the Coliseum, you have the concept of what USC is as a football program. But I'm sorry, Clay Helton is not the coach that Chip Kelly is. Chip Kelly is the name. He has the offense, the elitism, everything that you've ever needed, the success, the national championship appearances. He has everything that you want out of a college coaching hire. And I also got to say, and this is something that we talked about in the Chat Sports office a lot, they got him for a steal. $4 million a year for Chip Kelly to UCLA? Are you serious? You're telling me that Florida wasn't throwing $8 million at this guy? Well, Urban Meyer got almost that. Jim Harbaugh got $9 million, and Chip Kelly gets $4 million from UCLA. That's a steal. That is an absolute steal. Perfect hire. A fat A. Get your weigh-ins in. I want to hear some comments. Was Chip Kelly a good hire for UCLA? I say yes. I say you could not have picked out a better coaching hire for UCLA. All right, let's jump over to our next guy. Florida hiring Dan Mullen, stealing the Mississippi State head coach from the Bulldogs. And I got to say, this is a interesting grade to give out, because Dan Mullen's a quality head coach. I think he was constantly held back by the, I want to say, lack of potential recruiting power at Mississippi State. That's not to say that Mississippi State is a bad school. It's not. Quality school, quality football program. But if you're looking at it within the scale of the SEC, might not be the number one school in its own state. Definitely isn't the number 1, 2, or 3 school in its own division inside of its own conference. Definitely isn't a top 5 school in its own conference. Definitely might not even be a top 7 school in its own conference. Now Dan Mullen jumps to Florida and brings a prowess of understanding the quarterback position that they have not had in a long time. Florida's always had a ton of talent on defense, and they've always had good skill position players. But that quarterback position has been an absolute mystery for that team. Dan Mullen has shown a distinct ability in his career to understand quarterbacks. You just look through his college career and the guys that he has brought through into the NFL. Just to name off a couple, Alex Smith, Josh Harris from Bowling Green, Chris Leak at Florida, Tim Tebow at Florida, and now Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. Florida will be very happy to bring in a guy who understands the quarterback position like Dan Mullen does. I think this is a good hire. I'm going to give Dan Mullen a B. I think that Dan Mullen is a good hire for Florida. It's a stable hire. It's a safe hire as well. There's only so many things that can go wrong when you hire Dan Mullen. He brings in an understanding of the SEC as well. I think he's the safest hire they could have bring. But just a reminder, he was their third option. Dan Mullen was not Chip Kelly. Dan Mullen was not Scott Frost. Dan Mullen was their third option at Florida. So what does that tell you about the program? I think that throws a lot of question marks at this program as a whole, that they were not able to bring in a guy like Chip Kelly or a guy like Scott Frost, that they had to go with Dan Mullen. Maybe Dan Mullen was always number one. We'll never know. But I think we can all kind of, inquire or I guess assume that Dan Mullen was behind Chip Kelly and Scott Frost. So let's move away from those two and let's get into the rest of our coaching boards. We're going to start with Tennessee, looking at a couple coaching names that they could be looking at. Number 5, we have Chad Morris. Chad Morris is the current head coach at SMU. Done a really good job with that program, pulling it out of a pretty dark times. They used to have June Jones before him, but Chad Morris has actually turned them into a pretty good overall program. And also, he actually, with that SMU program, they currently have the number 1 wide receiver in the country going into the draft in Cortland Sutton. So I think that he would bring a nice offense to them. And also, one fun fact about Chad Morris, I understand, he's doing good at SMU. He was the offensive coordinator at Clemson for a while. He also is one of the best high school football coaches ever. 169-38 record as a high school head coach, including 2 back-to-back state titles in Texas before he left for SMU. So pretty impressive stuff as a high school head coach for Chad Morris. I think he'd be a stable head coaching option for them. We move to number 4. We have Willie Taggart, the current head coach for Oregon. I think his record this year is a little bit swayed. They lost their starting quarterback, Justin Herbert, who, but if you don't know Justin Herbert yet, you need to go learn who Justin Herbert is. That guy is special. That kid can play. But he was great at USF. He really took that program up to the, I don't want to say the upper echelon of programs, but he made them a favorite in the American Conference every single year. And you can see what they're doing this year, now under Charlie Strong, doing a lot of great stuff. He also basically launched the Western Kentucky before Jeff Brom took them over a couple years ago with Brandon Doughty. But that Western Kentucky program, before and after Willie Taggart got there, was a pretty big switch. But I don't think Willie Taggart's going to leave Oregon anytime soon, but I think he would be a great slot for them. At number 3, we have Mike Norvell, the Memphis head coach. I mean, hey, if you can bring Memphis to what he's been able to do with them, that's pretty spectacular. He's turned Riley Ferguson into an NFL quarterback option, which is pretty spectacular. They're 10-1 this year. They're going to be in the American Athletic Conference Championship game against UCF this weekend. Incredible game. Another, a matchup with another top 25 matchup. That's going to be super fun. He will bring a great offense to their system. He understands, what Tennessee is, obviously coming from Memphis. It would be a kind of not of a local kid coming home, but it would be a nice upgrade for Mike Norvell. Let's move into Scott Frost. Speaking of who Memphis is going to be taking on, they will be taking on UCF. Tennessee, this is an interesting one because I think at this point with Scott Frost, I think it's kind of Nebraska or he goes back to UCF. I actually think he should stay at UCF. I understand that there are not going to be a lot of times where a job like Nebraska opens up for Scott Frost, who, played quarterback at Nebraska. But, hey, I'll put it this way. He's 11-0 this year at UCF. If he comes back next year with the same team, and after they win a bowl game with the same offense, Mackenzie Martin staying their starting quarterback, they might be able to make a run at a top 4 spot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but a run could be there, coming off of a 12-0 year if they're able to win their conference and then a New Year's Six Bowl. We'll see. And then our next guy, we have Matt Campbell, who I think would be a good not great hire. I understand the allure of Matt Campbell. Young guy, big wins this year over Oklahoma and TCU. But if you look at his overall success at Iowa State, not great. I understand that it's Iowa State. They're in the Big 12. It's tough to actually get some wins in that conference as a lower tier team. But 10-14 overall, Iowa State. He's only been there for 2 years. He was great at Toledo, back-to-back 9-win seasons. But at the same time, would Matt Campbell be the guy that could kind of pull Tennessee out of the proverbial darkness? I'm not totally convinced. We'll see what happens with that coaching hire. We have a little reaction poll coming up here for you guys. Who should Tennessee hire? A wow face for Matt Campbell, a heart for Mike Norvell, a wow face for Willie Taggart, and then a angry face for Chad Morris. I personally think that Mike Norvell would be a fantastic option for them. Brings a stable offense in, brings a good head coach, and also brings, hey, Memphis, you move him up from Memphis, from the University of Memphis to the University of Tennessee. I think it's a pretty fitting upgrade for him. All right, we're going to quickly move through Texas A&M here because I think there's really only one guy right now that's being rumored to Texas A&M, and we'll talk about him. So at number 5, we have Jeff Brom, the Purdue head coach. He's actually got Purdue into a bowl game. I don't see them actually I don't see Jeff Brom leaving, but Purdue could be an option. At number 4, I'm going to move on here. We have Mike Norvell again. I think it would be an interesting option. Brings a nice offense to the SEC, but I think Mike Norvell has Tennessee on the mind. I think that's the guy they should go with. At number 3, we have Justin Fuente, the Virginia Tech head coach, who I personally think would be a great hire. I don't think he's going to leave Virginia Tech, though. I think that he's trying to build something big with that conference. I think that Justin Fuente, for the most part, is going to stay at Virginia Tech. He has his young quarterback. He has a good defense. The ACC is there. I think it's still ripe for the taking. I think Fuente is going to stay there. At number 2, we have Chris Peterson, the University of Washington head coach. Been fantastic for both Boise State and now Washington. Been one of the best coaches in the Pac-12. He's going to stay there. They just keep giving him money, but definitely an option for them. And then the number 1 guy, I can't even believe we're talking about this. Jimbo Fisher might leave FSU to go to Texas A&M. This is a real thing, people. We've been getting tweets all over the place about how Texas A&M might be able to steal Jimbo Fisher from FSU. I don't understand it. I think it'd be one of the worst moves that Jimbo Fisher could make, moving from a top 10 program to moving to Texas A&M, an 8-win-a-year program. I'm sorry, an 8-win-a-year program, and Texas A&M just fired an 8-win-a-year head coach. I don't think Jimbo Fisher is going. We even have a reaction poll. Will Jimbo Fisher really leave FSU? Wow face for yes, angry face for no, a laughing face for only for Texas A&M, and even another laughing face for you crazy dog, because I think I'm crazy. There's no way that if Jimbo Fisher leaves FSU, I'm going to go crazy. I think that'd be ridiculous. All right, let's move away from Texas A&M and into Nebraska. And we have the Navy head coach. He's been great. 83-47 as the head coach of Navy. He's made a bowl game every single year. Won 11-2 in 2015 with Keenan Reynolds. He was pretty fantastic. Been a pretty fantastic option for them so far. I think he's going to stay at Navy. I think Nebraska would be a little bit too big of an upgrade for him. Let him stay at Navy. Let us have fun Army-Navy games every single year. Let's move away now to Dave Doeren, the NC State head coach. Remember, this was the guy that took Northern Illinois out of the darkness with Jordan Lynch a couple years ago. Been in NC State since 2013. Done pretty great things with that program. They were ranked this year. Going to have one of the top draft picks this year, Bradley Chubb, come out. I think Dave Doeren is would be a good option for them. Again, a stable option. Maybe a little under what would be fitting for a Nebraska head coach, but a good option nonetheless. Number 3, we have Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach. We mentioned him before. Nebraska might actually be a better option for him. Lets him kind of stay a little bit more in his comfort zone. Lets him bring in an offense. I think that'd be a good pick for them. I think Matt Campbell to Nebraska would actually be a pretty stable fit. And number 2, this is actually a pretty interesting name that we're going to bring up here. Kyle Whittingham, the Utah head coach, he's been at Utah since 1994. He's been the head coach in 2004. He has been amazing for them. 110-55 record has basically kept them in relevancy for most of the time. He's been there 13-0 in 2008, obviously way back when they still had Alex Smith. He's done pretty astounding things with that program, but I think there's only one option for Nebraska at this point, isn't there? It's Scott Frost. Scott Frost is their guy, played quarterback there, this is the guy they're going for. I think Scott Frost is the guy. He's the man. He's who they want. Young head coach, up and coming. He'll bring stability, a great offense, and a lot of smarts to that position that I think that college football is looking for. We need a new young head coach in the sphere. And I think Scott Frost is the guy. So those are our Nebraska guys. Let's jump over to the Arkansas Razorbacks options. And we have Matt Campbell again at number 5. Obviously, they just fired Brett Bielema. We've talked enough about Matt Campbell. We don't need to talk about Matt Campbell. Let's actually go to our number 4 option here. Skip Holtz, the coach for Louisiana Tech, has actually done some pretty good things with that program. You might think, is Skip Holtz going to be a big enough coach, to move over to Arkansas? I think it would actually be a pretty good option of them. He's done really well as a head coach, 125-99 as a record. He's gone 5-3 in bowls. I think that he'd be a pretty good option for them. He was also at UCF and also at Eastern Carolina. So he has a good coaching repertoire. We'll see what happens with Skip Holtz, though. I think he'd be a decent option, might not be a big enough name for Arkansas. The big name, though, that's been connected to Arkansas so far has been Mike Leach, the head coach of Washington State. I think Mike Leach would be crazy for leaving. You're crazy for this one. I think that Mike Leach is going to end up staying. I think he's done incredible things with that Washington State program. Why leave? It's only going to get better now. Chip Kelly's there. They're bringing a lot of great coaches into the Pac-12. A lot of great talent there right now. I think Mike Leach would be good to stay, but hey, Arkansas is a good job. At number 2, we bring on Chad Morris again, the SMU head coach, who, again, good option, stable option, not the big name option, familiar with the, I guess, with Arkansas, but at the same time, might not be the big name. I think this is their guy, though. I think Mike Norvell is the guy that they're going to end up with. I mentioned him as the number 1 option for Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee is going to get him. Remember, Mike Norvell has a lot of connections to Arkansas. He went to the University of Central Arkansas. That's where he went to school. He is from Arkansas. It's a perfect fit. It's a perfect fit. Brings an offense to the SEC, brings a stable option as well. I think that he would be a great pick for them. It's a homecoming. What direction should Arkansas go? Wow face for Mike Norvell, a hard for Mike Leach, a laughing face for Matt Campbell, and a angry face for Chad Morris. It's Mike Norvell, ladies and gentlemen. I think Mike Norvell is definitely their guy. Let's jump over now to Arizona State. And one of the interesting things about this Arizona State job, we'll keep the reaction poll up here for a little bit. The interesting thing about this Arizona State job that I was talking about with James last night, it's kind of an amoeba. It can become whatever the head coach wants it to be. It's an open book. It's a blank slate. If you want to come in and be a defensive-centric team like Todd Graham wanted to be, you can come in. He didn't actually end up being successful at all, but you can do that. If you want to bring in an elite offensive system to that, you can. If you want to bring in a high-flying recruiting system to that, you can. This coaching position is very valuable and very enticing because it can become whatever you want it to be. So number 5, we have Charlie Strong, the head coach of South Florida. Good option. I think he's going to stay at UCF, though. He's done a good job there. And, we've seen him take over after the debacle that was him at Texas. But he's done well for them. He's a good quality guy. I think that Charlie Strong would be a stable option for Arizona State. But at the same time, I don't know how good he would be for that team as a whole. So I'm a little more wary of Charlie Strong. And number 4, we have Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Terrell Austin would be an interesting pick. I think he'd be an interesting pick, mostly because if you want him to actually, come in, this would be one of his first times as a college head coach, but I think he's going to stay in the NFL. I think that for him, a NFL head coaching job is coming up very quickly. The defense has been stable despite the fact that it hasn't exactly been the best defense in the world. He's known as a great leader in the locker room. A guy to kind of compare him to would be a Vance Joseph, who got picked up by the Denver Broncos as the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator the year before. Another option that we have is Pep Hamilton, the offensive coordinator for Michigan. This one kind of surprises me, mostly due to the fact that there are people calling for his head at Michigan right now. That offense has not been good. I think Pep Hamilton's one of the most overrated names in offense. I think he got lucky at Stanford having Andrew Luck. So, he's the passing game coordinator for Michigan, which, I don't think that helps him at all. If he's the passing game coordinator for Michigan, that's only going to hurt him. Seeing as the fact that they've been, LOL, JK, passing coordinator for Michigan, they've been awful. So we'll see what happens with Pep Hamilton. I think he's going to end up getting fired. I don't think a head coaching job for him is anywhere on the horizon. Here's an interesting name, Derek Mason, the head coach for Vanderbilt. I actually like this name. I think this could be a really good fit for him. It would give Arizona State a guy who isn't a massive name, but at the same time, has a good mind to him, a good defensive mind. He was the Stanford defensive coordinator for a couple of years, 2011 to 2013. He has NFL experience as well. He played in the NFL too. So I think this would be a quality hire, despite what his record is. Sometimes the coach is better than the team, and I think this is an instance just like that. If Matt Campbell's getting all this appeal, I think Derek Mason could be a good name to move on. But the number one name that we've actually heard with Arizona State, Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin would be, in my opinion at least, the perfect fit. I think it'd be a perfect fit. Brings an offense over there, brings another big-name head coach to the Pac-12. Whether or not the record has been there in terms of success for Kevin Sumlin's another thing, but I think that Kevin Sumlin would be a great option. Let's move away from Arizona State and into Mississippi State. We have Jeremy Pruitt, the Alabama defensive coordinator. Again, you want to pull, we've seen different coordinators from Alabama go on to do big things. Kirby Smart's one of them. I think that we should have Alabama. I think Jeremy Pruitt would be a good option, but at the same time, I think there are better names out there. Number 4, we have Barry Odom, the Missouri head coach. I question this. Missouri, I wouldn't call a high-flying program, but, Drew Lock has done incredible things for them. Andrew Luck's evil twin brother. Not crazy about Barry Odom. Let's move away to Bill Clark, though. Bill Clark has taken the UAB Dragons from the depth of nothing. Literally, they didn't have a football program, and now they have a better record than Florida. They're going to a bowl game this year. Pretty incredible stuff from UAB in a year where no one thought they were going to do anything. I think that this would be a pretty fantastic option for for Mississippi State. I'm a big fan of this one. I really do believe that we're going to see a pretty I think Bill Clark would actually be a pretty good name. At number 2, we have Neil Brown, the Troy head coach. Pretty lax option. They did have that big win over LSU. He is getting a lot of appeal as one of the younger up-and-coming coaches in college football right now. At the same time, he is the head coach of Troy. Jumping from Troy to Mississippi State would be a big jump. I think it'd be a big jump, especially since Troy's been good, 10-3 in 2016, 9-2 this year. But again, a jump from Troy to Mississippi State, a little big of a jump for me. And then I love this hire. Mike Bobo, the head coach for Colorado State, has been a revelation for that program, really taking that program from just nothing to a decent amount of success the past couple of years. I mean, 7-6, 7-6, 7-5 in that conference. I think that Mike Bobo would be a really good option for them. I'm a fan of Mike Bobo. I think that he'd be a really good, stable option for Mississippi State. I think the program kind of upgrade is there. You're not going from Troy to Mississippi State. You're going from Colorado State with a decent enough program and jumping to Mississippi State. So I think Mike Bobo would be a great hire for the for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. All right, coming back on screen here, a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Mizzen and Main, the most comfortable performance fabric dress shirts that you will find anywhere, not just to go to work, but to wear just about anywhere. You want to wear them to a bar, you want to wear them to sleep, you want to wear them to do anything. Mizzen and Main shirts are the comfiest thing that you will wear this year. And hey, they don't only make dress shirts, have a lot of array of different clothing options. So head to www.comfortable.af because everything that Mizzen and Main sells is comfortable as F. We love them here at Chat Sports, and we think you will love them too. And hey, if you're looking for a holiday gift, I think a Mizzen and Main shirt might just be what you're looking for. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to do some college football playoff projections. We're going to welcome in James Yoder to go 10 through 1 as we look forward to Tuesday's college football rankings. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show. I am not still Cam Rogers. I am Harris Rubenstein, and that is James Yoder, our college football insider, and also the Michigan football insider. You can check out all of his Michigan football,
insights.
Insights is the correct word on the Chat Sports Michigan football podcast.
I text Jim Harbaugh almost on a daily basis, almost.
Bi-daily or whatever the crazy word is. We have some college football playoff projections, James, that I want to get through. We have a big show tomorrow, probably going to be one of the biggest shows of the year, our college football playoff ranking show, live tomorrow, Tuesday, 7 p.m., the only place on Facebook Live that you will find the college football playoff rankings. So let's go through our projected top 10. At number 10, we have USC.
So I'm going to talk here towards the end about like the scenarios we're dealing with, but USC still has a chance to make this thing. If there's a couple upsets here, USC gives Stanford the blowout of the decade, 50-0 plus. USC still has a chance. A couple other teams in this top 10 do not have a chance, so we'll get to them in a moment.
USC is a fun one, but at the same time, I'd put the percentage of them getting into the playoff 2%. You get a 2% chance.
Now, that might be higher than than the actual percentage. It might be like 0.2 at this point, but they still have a chance.
0.2. How about a 0% chance of getting into the top 4? We have Penn State at number 9. There just is not a single scenario where Penn State gets in.
Yeah, unfortunately, that Michigan State loss for them was detrimental. They would be sitting there in the top 2 or 3 right now had they not lost that game a week after losing to Ohio State by 1 point. So Penn State's one of the few teams in the top 10 here. No chance of making it at all. 0% chance of making the college football playoff at this point.
A shame for Saquon Barkley, but shrug. What are you going to do? Moving on to number 8, Ohio State. Can I please don't put them back in my playoff.
Well, so look, if they beat Wisconsin, it comes down to them. And if they would beat Wisconsin and Oklahoma wins, it comes down to them or Alabama. That's as simple it is.
Yeah.
A 1-loss non-conference champ Alabama or a 2-loss conference champion Ohio State, who, by the way, has multiple double-digit losses. They got beat pretty bad by Oklahoma down the stretch, and they got crushed by a really kind of mediocre Iowa team. So I think the committee would go towards a 1-loss Alabama that whose only loss is to the hottest team in the country, Auburn. But we're going to see what happens. Another scenario for us, Harris, here is if Ohio State wins, if TCU beats Oklahoma, then you've got 2 spots available for 3 teams. It would be TCU, Ohio State, and Alabama. 2 of those 3 will get in. Because, look, the teams we're going to talk about coming up here, the ACC champ and the SEC champ, they're in no matter what. Yeah. No matter what. So really there's 2 possibilities of losses kind of shaking things up for us.
All right, let's move into that ACC teams that we were talking about. How about number 7, Miami? I have a question for you, James.
Yep.
If Clemson loses, is there any chance of them getting in at all?
That's a good question. It's a really good question.
Because Miami's not getting in if they lose, but Clemson.
So Clemson's going to be number 1 most likely. Yep. We'll reveal them here in a few moments. I don't think so, but I have been surprised before. So what they've got sitting out there over basically anybody else in the country is if Auburn were to beat Georgia and be the SEC champ, then Clemson would have a head-to-head victory in the beginning of the season against Auburn. And could there be an argument made that they both have 2 losses? One of these teams is the winner of a head-to-head matchup. Right. I still think cooler heads will prevail and say, hey, that was 10 to 12 weeks ago. That game doesn't matter anymore in the grand scheme of things. And one of these teams basically has beat a top 5, top 6 teams, team in the 3 out of the last 4 weeks, who would have been Auburn at that point, and they have a conference championship. I think head-to-head really kind of matters when all things are equal. So if Clemson would have been a conference champ, Auburn a conference champ, head-to-head comes into play there. But I don't think it's going to come into play when one's a conference champ, one just lost their conference championship.
We do have a fun thing about this upcoming weekend for championship. Reminder, you're going to want to catch college football recap coming up this Saturday. Only one other time in only one other time in AP poll history have we had 4 conference championships featuring a top 10 matchup.
That's insane. That's
crazy.
Insane. I mean, this
absolutely
is
crazy.
Most years, it's like number 1 Alabama versus number 23 Florida with 4 losses, and you just don't even care because you know they have no chance. This is the best college football Saturday of championship games I can remember, and not even Saturday. It starts on Friday with USC Stanford, which I think is going to be a phenomenal game as well.
It's going to be wild. All right, let's move into our number 6 team, the Georgia Bulldogs, sitting at 11-1.
Nothing really to say about here, Harris. They win and they're in. They were number 1 a couple weeks ago. They lost to Auburn. They've dropped down to number 6 in our projected rankings again. These are the projected top 10. We've nailed it all year, Harris. Nobody is projecting this college football playoff rankings better than Chat Sports. It's almost like we've got an insider in the committee. So Georgia's sitting there at 6. They're one behind Alabama, but it doesn't matter for them. The SEC champ, win and you're in. So they have one task, win. That's all they got to do.
All right, so moving into number 5 here, the Alabama Crimson Tide. A bunch of SEC teams in a row. Again, James, you can never convince me that a 2-loss Ohio State team is better than a 1-loss Alabama team. I'm sorry. They're going to if you put Ohio State and Alabama on the same field, I think Alabama just wipes them off.
Well, here's the question you got to ask yourself. Would Alabama go on the road in their 10th game, 9th game, whatever it was, would they go on the road to a team like Iowa and lose and drop, let them get 55 points drop on them?
No, they would not.
It's kind of the equivalent in the SEC of going on the road to Mississippi State and having Mississippi State drop. You know, Mississippi State, every few years they'll pop into the top 15. They'll kind of move in there. They contend every once in a while. Not a perennial power, just like Iowa. Iowa dropped 55 points on Ohio State the week after they beat Penn State, undefeated number 2 Penn State. So I think that is the most detrimental part of Ohio State's existence as a college football team right now is they got 55 points dropped on them a week after they beat number 2 Penn State.
And you can't even blame it on anything. No one was injured. There's no crazy situation. Like, they just got blown off the field.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just got blown off the field.
So Alabama, let's talk about Alabama for just one more second. Is they are really here, they are rooting for Ohio State to win, and then for the conference, for the committee to say, okay, 1 loss to Alabama, lost to Auburn. That's much better than Ohio State's 2 losses. And they're also probably rooting for TCU to beat Oklahoma because it just opens up another opportunity. I think if TCU beat Oklahoma, I would have to think they're in no matter what. I know TCU is at a nice season. If they beat Oklahoma, it gets even nicer. But I just can't imagine that TCU would get over Alabama.
Every one of the top 4 wins.
Yes.
Clemson, in our top 4, it'd be Clemson, Auburn, obviously the number 4 is SEC championship, Wisconsin, and then also I believe who's our number 2 team that we have.
It really doesn't matter here. What happens? The ACC, SEC champ is in no matter what. The 2 teams, Wisconsin and Oklahoma in there. If those 4 win, I mean, we know.
Can Alabama get in if all of our top 4 wins?
No chance. And not even the top 4. It's the ACC, SEC. It's really Oklahoma and Wisconsin. Those are the only 2 games Alabama needs to worry about.
Basically, Alabama needs. Well, we'll get into our top 4.
Alabama's rooting for Ohio State. They're rooting for TCU.
Okay, we've Auburn at number 4 here. Alabama will never root for Auburn, but are you rooting for Auburn?
No, well, Alabama needs to root for Auburn, I think for sure, because that makes their loss that much better, right? So they are rooting for their arch rival to make it in the playoff, and I think, I think it would be one of the best, cooler storylines in this college football playoff era in year 4 now, if 2 rivals of that magnitude had the opportunity to either play each other, which I doubt they would do. I bet the committee would make sure they're not playing in that first game, but the opportunity to play in for a national title game. You get up to some of the best rivalries in college football. We voted them number 1 in our rivalry rankings a few weeks back. That would be amazing if Auburn and Alabama were like 1 and 3, whatever it was, both won, got a chance to play each other in the championship game. I think that would be
on a neutral field too.
Really cool. That'd be really cool. So Alabama is rooting for Auburn to beat Georgia because you want the team you lost to look like a better loss, right? And so if they're going up against Ohio State, you're saying, hey, we lost to maybe number 2 Auburn. If they beat Georgia, they'll probably pop up number 2, maybe number 3 behind Oklahoma if they win. And hey, Ohio State, who were your losses against? Oh, Iowa, 55 points. That's not cutting it for the committee, in my opinion.
All right, cool. Let's jump into number 3, the Wisconsin Badgers. The only undefeated team left. In my opinion, I understand that the schedule's been a little bit easy, but let me tell you something. 12-0 is 12-0. Yeah, 12-0 is 12-0. And they've won everything put in front of them. They haven't just won. Every single game that they've played, it's been convincing. They've looked like the best team on the field. The defense is outstanding. The running game is great. Hornibrook is good enough. I believe in this team. I think this team is legit.
You talk to some Wisconsin fans, they get nervous every time Hornibrook drops back to pass. But nevertheless, it's pretty simple for Wisconsin. They win, they're in. There's no question about it. They will be in the college football playoff. Now, here's the interesting scenario. One, I didn't even put on my scenario list because it just seems that far-fetched, but I want to give Wisconsin some credit. There is a shred of chance if they were to lose to Ohio State in a close game, or maybe a game they were dominating but a fluke play happens, or the quarterback gets knocked out, whatever it is, there is a shred of chance, a small shred. I don't even know what galaxy there would be the shred would be in. It would take TCU beating Oklahoma and Ohio State beating Wisconsin, and Wisconsin to kind of get the nod over Alabama or TCU in that scenario. There was a shred that Wisconsin could lose and still make it, but it is the smallest shred you could ever imagine. So I'm gonna toss that in my playoff scenario. scenario for tomorrow, but at this point, it's very unlikely Wisconsin can lose and make it. But there is a shred because they only would have one loss.
Speaking of teams that will lose and could make it, if Oklahoma, our number 2 team, loses to TCU, can they sneak into that number 4 spot?
No.
No?
No. There's no chance.
Is there any way that Oklahoma, even if it's close, like it's like it's a last-second field goal?
No, because
it's like 45-42.
Because they would be going up against the Big Ten. I mean, I guess maybe. I shouldn't say no, because the answer would be maybe, because they would be going up against, there would really be 2 spots for 4 teams. It'd be Ohio State, Alabama, TCU, Oklahoma. They certainly wouldn't get in over TCU. They just beat them, okay. I don't believe.
Yeah.
That they both have the same record. And then they might get in that scenario over Ohio State if Ohio State had 2 losses, but Ohio State's got a conference championship now, and then they'd be going up against a 1-loss Alabama. So I don't think it's possible. They'd have to beat out Ohio State and Alabama.
I guess if TCU, who we have at our proverbial number 11,
yep.
if Oklahoma loses to TCU, there really isn't a universe where Oklahoma ends up being ranked higher than TCU.
No, it wouldn't happen. There's no chance.
Okay.
No chance.
And then at number 1, to end off our rankings here, we have the Clemson Tigers, who, in my opinion, James, I think they've been the best team in the country all along. I really do.
They really have. They had a little hiccup there against Syracuse, and they lost their quarterback, and that's fine. But they were the most impressive team the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year. Had that loss, struggled a little, but they went on the road and they beat some really nice teams this year. They beat Auburn, they beat Louisville, they beat Virginia Tech. They went into the city of Virginia Tech. I'm forgetting at this point. Blacksburg, Virginia, from the peanut gallery back there, and they won the game. And so Clemson, I believe, is going to be your favorite going into the college football playoff should they beat Miami. Now I'm going to make this prediction right here. This could be a frozen cold take if it doesn't come to fruition, but Clemson is going to run Miami. I'm talking about like 42-10. They're going to murder Miami, and they're going to go in as the number 1 team. I think the prohibitive favorite.
We're going to talk about
back-to-back titles, Harris.
On college football recap today. If and when you stay on the Chat Sports programming today, we actually talk about how Miami, in the terms of ACC rankings, is pretty middle tier in terms of stats.
Yeah, just 71 minutes from now, Harris, I'm joining you again. We're gonna go over college football, all the games from yesterday, talk a little of these rankings again. So it's gonna be fun.
Cool. All right, let's go through our 6 through 10, and then 1 through 5 one more time. Georgia, Miami, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, 6 through 10. And then Clemson, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Auburn, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. James, I can tell you one thing. I think every single person in the country should have their butts on a couch on Saturday.
If you have plans other than watching these games, you need to get your priorities straight, in my opinion.
It's going to be a crazy time. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it.
We'll have you back on for College Football Recap in a bit. We're going to bring a weigh-in up here for the people at home. Does Ohio State deserve a spot if they win the Big Ten? I say no. Keep Ohio State out of my playoff. I agree with James. You lose to Iowa by 1 million you can't get in. I'm sorry. 2-loss team, not going to do it. Not going to be able to do it. Keep Ohio State out of my playoff. I don't want Ohio State. Learn your lesson, committee. I know you can't do this on a year-to-year basis, blah, blah, blah. Look what happened when you put in a bad Ohio State team in last year. Look what happened. Ohio State got blown off the field by legitimately good teams, and it will happen again this year. All right, coming back on screen here, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, we flipped our football around because it's time for a little NFL. We had a funner than expected NFL Sunday yesterday. I thought I was telling Jordan Giorgio, who's coming up in a little bit with quick hitters. I told her that I thought this was going to be the worst NFL weekend all season long, and it was okay. It was way better than the Thanksgiving games. But let's get into our NFC playoff picture as it currently stands. We have the Philadelphia Eagles sitting at number 1, 10-1 right now. Carson Wentz leading that team to an impressive 10-1 record, one of the best, the best offense in football right now. And also, I want to make this very clear about the Eagles. They're also the team that's having the most fun. And usually, every single year, the team that has the most fun is the team that ends up doing well. Throw back to the Panthers a couple years ago. Throw back to those Steelers teams a couple years ago. So those teams have the most fun, and I think this Eagles team is definitely one of them. They remind me, I'm trying to remember, I hate comparing things to the Patriots all the time. This reminds me of the Patriots team from 2014 that just was unstoppable on offense, had an amazing defensive line, and was just so stout against the run that they so versatile. I think that right now this is your Super Bowl favorite, despite whatever's going on in the AFC between the Steelers and the Pats. Let's move into our number 2 seed here, the Minnesota Vikings. Let me tell you something. Case Keenum has arrived. He's here. Who would have thought that Case Keenum, the former Houston quarterback, would end up doing this? I thought Case Keenum and TJ Yates were the same person for a long time. I don't think they've ever been spotted in the same room. But Case Keenum has been incredible for the Vikings, so much so that he's keeping the love of my life, Teddy Bridgewater, out of the lineup. Not cool. I want to see Teddy Bridgewater get some snaps. But as of right now, Case Keenum is playing so well that he's keeping him off the field. Never would have expected that. All right, looking at number 3, we have the Los Angeles Rams. They took down the New Orleans Saints yesterday, as your boy predicted last week, because this Rams team is legit. And I'll mention this again on NFL Recap coming up next. This Rams team is here to stay. This isn't just a team that's here for like a year or maybe 2. Young quarterback, young head coach, young running back, great stable of weapons, growing defense, solid offensive line. This team is going to be here for a while. Be prepared to see the Rams in the NFL elite for years to come. At number 4, man, this just tells you how strong the NFC is this year. At number 4, the New Orleans Saints at 8-3 are the number 4 seed in the NFC right now. They've been fantastic. The loss against the Rams, they're going to kind of call a wash. They were out Marshawn Lattimore and Ken Crawley, their top 2 corners. They'll be just fine. This is a good Saints team. I admit I was wrong about the Saints. It's a good Saints team, but at the same time, I question whether or not they will be able to win in the playoffs. I question that a lot. We'll see. I question it, but we'll see what happens with them. Let's move into our wild card number 1 team. We have the Carolina Panthers. Look at break up the NFC South, ladies and gentlemen. Currently sitting at 8-3. I am absolutely stunned by how good this Panthers team is. I thought this Panthers team was going to be average at best. Average at best. 8-3. I'm absolutely stunned. So we'll end up seeing what happens with this Carolina Panthers team. I don't think they're going to do anything in the playoffs, but oh my goodness. Carolina Panthers at 8-3. Did not see that coming. Speaking of things I did not see coming, how about the Atlanta Falcons at 7-4? Talk about a season turnaround for the ages. They looked like they were completely done. I thought the Falcons were done. We said it multiple times that the Falcons were a bunch of fakers. I think that the Atlanta Falcons might actually get to the Super Bowl for a wild card spot. I said it. Watch out. They might be this year's wild card surprise team. What happens if they win the first round and all of a sudden we have that high-flying Atlanta Falcons offense heading into Philly to take on Carson Wentz? You know that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other? That's the Atlanta Falcons 2016 pointing at Philadelphia Eagles 2017. We'll see. All right, let's move into our NFC play picture. A couple of teams that are on the cusp with the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, and the Dallas Cowboys. Poor Cowboys, right? Pretty sad. So close, yet so very far. And also, I mentioned this a couple times, Dak Prescott is not bad. Please stop this madness that Dak Prescott is a bad quarterback. I don't want to hear it. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. He's between 10 to 12 in the NFL in total rankings. There are only about 9 guys or so that I would take ahead of him. Relax. He's had 4 bad games out of 22. Relax. Let's move into the AFC now. The Pittsburgh Steelers at number 1. Same record as the Pats, but they hold the tiebreaker as of right now. They looked great last night. I don't know how they let up 28 points to a Brett Hundley-led Green Bay Packers football team at home. But, hey, your guess is as good as mine. But Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Big Ben are firing on all cylinders right now. I can't wait to see what happens when they take on the Patriots in 2 weeks. And speaking of the Patriots, we have them at number 2, sitting at 9-2. Look, I'll put it this way. Every single year, I say the same thing to every single person that freaks out over September football. September football does not matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care. What happens in September stays in September, because clearly after that, all hell breaks loose. Ever since, the Kings of September, the Kansas City Chiefs, have now lost 5 of their last 6. So I don't want to hear anything else about September football. We're now in November and October, or November and December. This is when the real NFL teams show themselves. At number 3, we have the Tennessee Titans. Speaking of real NFL teams showing themselves, I don't think this is it. I think if this Tennessee Titans team somehow makes it to the playoffs, they're going to get blown off the field. I think this is a growing Titans team. It's growing a little bit slower. They didn't take the step that I thought they were going to take this year. Their offense is still held back by the fact that Mike Mularkey is calling plays. So we'll give the ball to Derrick Henry. Please give the ball to Derrick Henry. At number 4, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I told you so. I told you. No one listened to me about the Chiefs. I told you. This is what they do. Once the defense breaks down a little bit late in the year, they fall apart. Once the Chiefs are unable to run the ball like 30 times a game for 200 yards and Alex Smith has to win you a football game, fun fact, he can't. All those years in San Francisco, guess how they won games? With their defense. All the years that he got there, early years in Kansas City, how did they win games? With the defense. Not Alex Smith. I told you so. Moving into our wild card, team number 1, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll put it this way. This team is good. Team is fun. Do not trust them in the playoffs. I trust this Jaguars team as far as I can throw them in the playoffs. They're a good team, a lot of talent. They're growing. They'll get there. This isn't their year. Defense is fun. It's going to be the same defense next year. They have 10 of their 11 defenders returning. This Jaguars team will be just fine. And then the wild card 2 spot. Look what happens when you start Tyrod Taylor. Oh my goodness. What a surprise. It's almost like Tyrod Taylor, a 9-year NFL veteran, is better than a 5th-round pick out of Pittsburgh. Wow. Hot takes. Moving into our on-the-cusp teams, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Chargers, and the Raiders. I will not take credit for calling that the Chargers were going to be good because I called it too late or too early. But look what happens. San Diego Chargers, best pass rushing duo in the league. Offense is doing great. The running game is great. And the offense has come together. I'm a big fan of this Chargers team. So watch out for them for that wild card slot number 2. So that, folks, has been the Cam Rogers Show. I am Harris Rubenstein filling in for Cam because I very clearly am not Cam Rogers or anyone from Nashua, New Hampshire. So stick with us because coming up next, Mitchell Renz will join me and we are going to show you the highlights from all the NFL action from Sunday. It's NFL Recap from Chat Sports in the 11 Eastern Time hour. Reminder, you can follow me on Twitter at Sportstein. And remember, as always, that we are sponsored by Mizzen & Main. Head to www.comfortable.af. NFL Recap is coming up next, so stay tuned. Mitchell Renz sitting right here next to me. Let's go.